Welcome to the Cybersecurity and Cloud Podcast, where we hear the stories of information security professionals. This podcast explores different angles, out-of-the-box ideas, and the human element of cybersecurity. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts and supporting us at www.patreon.com/CSCP so we can continue to bring on amazing guests. You can watch videos of the interviews at www.cybercloudpodcast.com.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cybersecurity and Cloud Podcast. This is your host Francesco, and today we have the pleasure to have Joe on the podcast, a fantastic OSINT guy. And I've attended a few of Joe's class and they've been amazing. And today we talk a little bit about OSINT, but we drift off in any kind of range from data science to AI to machine learning. So please stay tuned and enjoy this fantastic episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cybersecurity and Cloud Podcast. It is your host, Francesco Spolone, to welcome you back. And we have the absolute pleasure to have Joe Gray, our OSINT resident in place, and actually the one that opened the stream about OSINT on the podcast. So welcome, Joe. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I am doing great, surviving despite the fact that UK has officially the highest death rate in the whole world, has surpassed even UK in terms of COVID. But we want to stay positive. But Joe, do you want to tell us, we were chatting before about how much stuff you were doing, and you want to give the audience a little bit of background about yourself and then what you're doing right now?
Sure. So my coping mechanism for sheltering in place during this COVID crisis, given those of you who know me know that I travel all over the world to speak and give training. So it's definitely been a major cultural adjustment for me, actually spending a lot of time at home. So my coping mechanism is I'm actually being hyper productive. I've spent a lot of time doing a lot of different things. So I'm working through the technical editing process for my first book called Practical Social Engineering from No Starch. It's due out October 13th. I have a pre-order link I'll share with you. I'm contributing 2 chapters for another book. And then in addition to that, I'm writing some code, some of which dealing with disinformation and deception. It's written in Python with some elements of go ahead and take a drink if you're playing buzzword bingo. There's going to be some natural language processing, some machine learning, and some AI elements to it.
Oh yeah.
So, but I'm not going to say that it's something that it's not. It's not something that I'm not trying to sell this particular solution. It's more of something I'm doing for goodwill. And it's not meant to be perfect. It's just meant to be good enough.
You mentioned machine learning before AI, so you justify.
Yeah. Well, I mean, realistically, the type of stuff I'm running with under the hood with it has some AI tendencies to it. But I'm never going to say that this is truly intelligent. So there's no level.
Grade AI.
I'll call it. Let's just call it artificial common sense.
Okay, I like that. Let's make it into a thing. Somebody's gonna steal it. So
trademark right here, right now. Yeah, it's my own intellectual property. It's just like I've been joking about buying a puppy. I'm not going to. I've been talking about buying a puppy, and I said I wanted to get the breed was a Great Dane, but I only wanted to get the runt of the litter so I could tell people I had an okay Dane. Yeah, it's the kind of stuff I'm coming up with.
Amazing breed. Is that COVID related? Being overproductive.
I mean, it's just one of those things that popped into my mind. That being said, in addition to that, I'm overhauling all of my courses that I run as the OSINT. So all the OSINT related courses are moving from a 4-hour format to a 6-hour format. I'll be providing more of a defined handout. There'll be more defined lab experiments associated with it. And then, of course, as opposed to 4 hours, it'll be 6. I'm also authoring 2 new courses that I'll be offering live, and I'm in the process of doing a recorded training for some on-demand stuff. The home for that is to be determined. I'm in the process of having conversations with the varying platforms to find out where everyone can win from the platform, most importantly, the community, and then myself. So I've got that going on as well. And then beyond that,
Jeez.
beyond that,
is a beyond that.
oh, there totally is. I mean, I go 100%, 110% of the time, twice on Sundays. And that being said, I've decided that I'm going to pursue some more formal education in addition to the bachelor's and master's I already have. So I'm spending a lot of time on EDX, taking.
I love EDX.
I love it as well. I'm in the process of taking the prerequisite courses for me to enter a second master's and ultimately a third master's and a doctorate program over the next 10 years, just because I'm trying to do a somewhat different discipline. Understanding
Creating a discipline?
Well, not necessarily creating one, but
not yet.
Not yet. I'm well on my way of creating the OSINT discipline. Totally joking there.
Please tell me everything about the OSINT. It's gonna be. It sounds like a religion or or new group.
OSINT is just kind of like my own flavor of OSINT and like my boundaries of how I do it, more or less. It's nothing beyond anything along those lines. I just like the term OSINT. I thought of it last year at Hackfest in Canada. It is, honestly. So
I want a T-shirt.
Hey, I thought about it this way, right?
Had I a T-shirt?
If I had have known I was into OSINT when I created my Twitter account, my Twitter handle would have been OSINT. If I'd have thought about the name OSINT when I was starting up my training arm, the OSINTion would be called OSINT. Instead, I just went ahead and bought all the domains and secured all of the handles on varying social media platforms for OSINT. But I mean, C3P Joe is pretty appropriate as well, because that's
cool.
It's a pun on C3PO, actually, because in the Star Wars universe, C3PO can communicate in 6 million different ways. And to be a successful social engineer, you kind of have to do that as well. So it's still highly appropriate. It just doesn't capture the OSINT piece.
No, but I like the idea behind the history behind the logo and the history behind the name. It gives steps to the name.
Exactly.
Like
yeah. But yeah, so beyond that, I'm spending a lot of time on ADX meeting prerequisites. Because
how did you actually find the prerequisites for the virus training? Because I just cherry pick the stuff. So I'm doing CS50, the coding stuff.
Okay, so I'm doing CX50 and CX50 AI right now as well. I'm just doing those for grins because they don't really count for anything. But if you look at Harvard Extension's website, they have a master's in liberal arts and data science, and
everything is data science in the US right now.
Right.
It's like something and data science.
Right. And that's the data science is the adjacent discipline that I'm trying to pick up to marry with my knowledge and experience of InfoSec. So that being said, to get into Harvard's program, you have to have a bachelor's with a 3.0 GPA or higher. Okay, that's easy. And you have to have taken calculus. Because my degrees are actually in IT, I never had to take calculus. Mm-hmm. I've taken pre-calculus twice in the past and passed it both times, but it's been about 10 years since I've taken it. So I'm currently taking a pre-calculus class on EDX to knock the rust off. I should be done with that in about a week. I've been in it for about a month now. And then I'm taking calculus locally at a community college in the fall. But also with Harvard's data science program through the extension school, if you do MITx's data science course, you get out of taking 3 of Harvard's courses. So
that's great.
I'm starting that in
Send all
September.
you need a graph for that, for all of that. If you do this,
Well, it's funny you should say such a thing, because I don't have Microsoft Project on my computer, but as soon as Excel loads here, I could share the screen because I've got everything. I've basically got my own Gantt chart showing every course that I plan on taking between fall of 2020 and spring of 2030.
No, share it. I'm gonna attach it to the podcast note. And
no, we're good. But so basically, I'm trying to meet the prerequisites for that right now. Once I finish that, because the program, it's not cheap. Don't get me wrong. It's Harvard. It's not cheap, but it is, relatively speaking, very inexpensive. I think the total cost of this online master's is about the cost of a semester or two at the undergrad level in person at Harvard. So it's not really that expensive in that regard. But it's more about like the math behind data science. So I'm also looking at doing a master's in computer science at Georgia Tech online that's more focused into like the machine learning aspect of it. And then everything from that will translate directly into a doctorate program. But the thing with that is I'll actually have to move to Atlanta and do that in person. But I really would only have to take, I think about 6, I think I'm counting 10 classes here. So it wouldn't really be that long. But, dissertation, that can take a while as well. Yeah. So, but, ultimately it's one of those things. I want to learn a new discipline, and because I already have a master's, I could just immediately go for a doctorate in data science somewhere. But the thing about that is I would be so far behind the curve because I'm missing all the bachelor's level, higher level math, Calc 1 through 3, calculus-based stats, linear algebra, differential equations.
It's a steep curve.
Yeah, and I've not taken anything at the master's level, so I don't want to set myself up for failure by going to something at the doctorate level in something to that effect. But at the end of the day, my ultimate goal at the end is find a way to marry the data science disciplines with concepts of InfoSec. Some of which could be from OSINT. There's a lot of opportunities for using machine learning and automation for some OSINT tasks. It may be possible in some social engineering type stuff. I'm not sure. I would have to test that.
It's fundamental data collection. So the more information you have and the more correlation you can make from one point or a data set to another data set.
Of course, yeah.
Then ultimately we do that manually in OSINT, right?
Right. And I actually the Good Idea Fairy just visited me. I'm not going to repeat what just came to my mind, but I just thought of an application of using data science concepts for social engineering in a successful way. But of course, you can also use it in forensics and incident response, as well as in the attack patterns themselves. So there's a lot of opportunity for it. The thing that I find to be very important with this is just finding the opportunity to do it in a way that accurately describes what it is without getting too wrapped up in the vendor hype associated with it. Because I think that's what soured terms like cybersecurity, machine learning, automation, AI, within the InfoSec industry. A lot of people have soured on it because vendors have they've abused it. They've driven it into the ground. It's one of those things like from The Princess Bride. You keep saying that word, but I don't think you know what it means. And it's just to that point to where people have soured on the term. And I like the disciplines, but at the same time, I don't want to jump on that vendor hype train either.
No, I think it's wise to abstract the concept. That's why I was jokingly said, you mentioned machine learning instead of mentioning AI. Machine learning is at least not that abused at the moment, but I'm sure you will be. But it's a science between doing correlation of data set, and I think that's what is the next step of aggregating data. So even we're doing some work on vulnerability management and how to aggregate different data sets from different tools, because
absolutely.
That's the future. It's like a correlation. Right now we have so much information, we just can't cope with it anymore. So I think that's the future of any field.
I mean, and right now we're seeing a lot of we're seeing the words AI and machine learning get tossed around a lot in the malware analysis space and in like the SIM and SOC space. So in those,
that's kind of natural, but
yeah,
it's like, how do you do correlation? How do you do profiling and correlation in those kind of things? Because every vendor is unique, every people is unique. So like, how do you detect a false positive or false negative? Those are the big win of machine learning, and how do you profile? And that's the hard stuff, because you will need to profile a number of clients and a number of attack patterns and create that.
Exactly. And from a perspective of OSINT, during the day job, my coworkers and I, we've established a specific term that we call Fidelity. And that speaks to the quality of the data, the fact that the data has an intelligence context to it, and that we can corroborate it across one or more sources. So I think leveraging something like data science or machine learning to improve the fidelity of data provided could certainly be of value. And anytime, I think the problem a lot of things within our industry have with using those buzzwords, they try to use it to completely augment the human element, as opposed to use it as a way to augment some effort, but not replace the human analysis effort.
Hey, Francesco here. A very quick message from our sponsor, and then we return back.
This podcast is brought to you by the generosity of NSC42 Limited, your cybersecurity partner. Cybersecurity is complex and different for every organization, and you need the best tailored service to make sure your customers' data is safe and sound, so you can focus on what's important, focusing on your clients and bringing the best and safest experience. NSC42 Limited can help you during your cloud transformation, cybersecurity assessment for your compliance checklist on-premise and on the cloud. Want to know more? Visit www.nsc42.co.uk to get your free quote.
I think we should get away from automation is killing the human. Automation is killing the boring stuff of the human being, and then creating that intelligence that you can't create by automation. Because I think we have sort of a trade-off right now when we say, well, what can you automate, and where you're going to spend more time actually thinking about how to automate and actually do it yourself.
Exactly. Because, I'm a huge fan of long short-term memory models and recurrent neural networks, as well as cluster analysis and linear regression. The thing is, they can help you get within a certain accuracy and a certain ballpark of it, but at the same time, you need a human that has enough comprehension of those concepts and topics to be able to take the outputs, to interpret it, perform their own initial analysis, assign a fidelity score to it, and then determine, is this good quality data? Is this something that makes sense? Does this analytic process work? Or, supervised versus unsupervised learning. Do we need to adjust our inputs, our models, or whatever? Or what, in all honesty, was the hypothesis entirely wrong with this?
Yeah, or the initial data set, or the algorithm that we trained on, also. But it's fundamentally, again, back to the topic of are we trying to automate everything, or how do we codify experience effectively? Right.
And I mean, that's the problem. Everybody wants to automate everything because,
I don't think we should.
I don't either. I mean, to Jeff Goldblum's point in Jurassic Park, too many people in this industry are too worried about whether they can. They're not stopping to think whether they should.
I love that quote.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the reality of it is, it can cut costs, and you're only having to pay for processing power, and you only need like 3 developers as opposed to a workforce of say 50, whatever. And it can cut the cost, but you're also lacking in the human analysis and your ability to draw conclusions from things, and that becomes problematic. And that's where I draw the line. As I see it right now, I don't foresee that I'll ever say that you can completely replace a human element with it. But I think that we can wisen up our processes to make more efficient human analysis with it.
Augmenting the human element, like
exactly. Instead
Deus Ex quote.
and instead of augmenting the human analysis, I like to think of it as amplifying the human analysis.
I like that. That was just it's one of my favorite games, Deus Ex. So I tried to squeeze it in every year and there.
Right.
But actually, the conversation is great, but it completely drifted off from what I was expecting. So it's amazing how
you never know what you're going to get out of me.
I actually was. I remember I was in one of your first digital training. Actually, maybe the very first one.
Yeah. I was thinking to myself, he's taken some of my training, but I don't recall which course.
The very first one, the very introductory one, because I was curious about. I wasn't into OSINT at that time. I didn't even know what that word is. So I said, you know what, it's cool. So I want to learn more about it, and that's I learned from community. So I started learning. Plus, a lot of my community people, I mean, Stu and other people are doing a lot of social engineering and OSINT.
Right. You're local to the Minihats Club. They are absolute beasts when it comes to the missing persons CTF.
Yeah. I love the work that they're doing.
Absolutely. I'm on the password inspection agency. So Minihats Club, they've won Trace Labs missing person CTF Global number 3 and Global number 4. Number 3, we got 18th place out of about 160 teams. Global number 4, we got 5th place out of 205 teams, I think. So there's a lot of healthy trash talk between the Minihats Club and the Password Inspection Agency. Not to say that I'm the trash talker, but yeah,
just to say the community wasn't stressed enough. The Twitter community wasn't stressed enough of recent because of, I don't know if you followed the storm about the mouse.
The which one?
The mouse game.
No.
That's good. Let's leave it at that. It's another wave of drama of Twitter, and I think healthy trash talk between teams competing with each other is great.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, as far as I know, we respect each other. I know I respect the Minihats Club. I have no reason to think that they don't respect the Password Inspection Agency. So, that being said, there's definitely some respect associated with it. So, it's not
it's not an offensive or aggressive talk.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the kind of banter that, as we say in England, is the kind of banter that tease each other out, but it doesn't turn ugly.
Yeah, it's kind of like sibling rivalry. I'll talk trash to the Minihats Club and their CTF team all day, but if I catch some outsider saying something, then they're going to deal with Minihats Club and Password Inspection Agency.
And you don't because everybody has information now, so you don't want to piss off people on an OSINT team or a social engineering team, because either you, your family, or your friend are gonna get pwned.
It's on the internet, so therefore it must be true.
Exactly. So note for everybody's safety: don't mess up with these people.
Or take my OPSEC course before you do it.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I think we were of recent. Alyssa was joking that OPSEC people are stressing her because she posted a picture of her and the house. It's like, yeah, I'm traceable. I know that I posted their pictures, so I know that I'm traceable.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's just everybody's traceable. It's just a matter of how much effort it takes to find the person. From an OSINT perspective, being able to evade an OSINT investigator is kind of like surviving a grizzly bear attack. And basically what that means is you just have to outrun the other person. You have to outrun the slowest person. As long as you're the second slowest person, you're okay.
He has one other target.
Yep. You don't want to surveil me. You want to surveil this person.
He's more interesting. He has more juicy stuff.
I saw him post the password to his bank account on Facebook. You want to look at him.
Totally. Call this child like his password.
Yeah, exactly.
What was that thing about? Anyway,
what, you had a glitch with your ATM transaction? You withdrew. You started and had a balance of like 320, and you withdrew 200, and now you've got like 1.8 billion. Yeah, they're a way better target.
but actually, on that topic, tell me if you can disclose some interesting stories that of your Warzone stories that you can disclose.
Social engineering front. According to the 2017 Semantic ISTR, the Internet Security Threat Report, the global successful phishing rate was about 13%. So when I was working as a consultant doing a lot of social engineering, I used that as my benchmark. If I did well, if I did over 13%, okay, I was doing good. If I did less, okay, this was a really good company to work against. So I kick off the engagement, and I'm doing a phishing campaign. I've surveilled this company very heavily. Their CEO is retiring in a week. Their COO is taking over.
Mm-hmm.
I buy the .us to their .com in terms of domains. I have a trash domain. I think I'm just going to make up one, but it was something like cgi-bin.coffee or something like that. It was some useless, very skeptical, high level, like top level domain. So I spend some hours doing some OSINT. I find out this about that part of the organization. So I put together my fish. I get the COO's out of office response. So I steal his email signature. I put that in the email. I tie it all up to G Suite. Because nobody's going to block mail from mail.google.com. Right.
Yeah.
So
or Office 365 for
exactly.
What it takes.
So I got a G Suite account for the month. So then I put the email together. I take some direct quotes from press releases and put in there.
I mean, that's trick amazing.
Yeah.
It's out there.
It's sleazy, but it works. And when you're doing social engineering, sleazy is good. So I put together the email. I sent it in batches of 3 to 5. I didn't want to send it all at once because I was targeting about 150 people. So everything's going per the norm. I'm redirecting them to my .coffee domain for an employee satisfaction survey. I think I know that coffee was not the top level domain, but it was like insert company name com.cgi-bin.coffee or whatever was my phishing landing page. And I had a perfect clone of
nobody suspected. And nobody suspected that was war. That was absolutely off.
Right. Well, if they had hovered, they would have saw it, but they didn't hover. I had a perfect clone of SurveyMonkey. I used Let's Encrypt, so it had the green padlock. So most all awareness training, I had checked the box. Yeah. Most everything. The only thing they could have done to prevent it was look at who actually sent it, because it was from company.us, not company.com. And if they would have hovered, that was their only 2 opportunities for the email itself.
But even company.us, it's highly probable because a lot of companies say you have 2,000 domain and all of a sudden somebody switched domain. So
yeah, exactly. So I sent the email. They went to the landing page. I'm seeing a bunch of people come to the landing page, but I'm not seeing a lot of data input. And I'm still sending emails out. I'm using somewhat pseudo-random intervals to send them out about 10 to 15 minutes apart. In batches of 10 to 20. So a little bit in, all of a sudden I'm blocked. And at that rate, I have a script. So with this fake SurveyMonkey thing that I ran, I had modified the SurveyMonkey code because SurveyMonkey uses post to pass the parameters.
Mm-hmm.
I changed it to get, so that I could capture everything in my Apache log and I didn't have to run a backend database.
Okay.
Not very secure, but this is a phishing engagement. So
you just need data for a moment.
Right, exactly. And then, I made sure that my Apache log and my server were pretty well secured so people couldn't just come in and ransack it. So the first one was a login page. Then after that, it asked for some password reset questions. And then the final page was, it was an error and it said this survey has expired, but I miscoded it initially, and it went on an infinite loop. And at that time, Firefox and Chrome didn't have any protection against that, so it would just infinitely loop. I was like, should I cut this out? No, I'm going to leave it.
You actually DDoS.
Well, it wasn't for a DDoS type thing, but it was enough to where a user should see it and be alarmed. Yeah. So I decided to leave it in as an opportunity for redemption. So when I find out factor. Exactly. So when I get blocked, I'm at a 6% success rate, and I'm like, man. And
they're winning.
during the kickoff call, my vice president, this was right after I won the black badge at DerbyCon. So the black badge. It's not showing because of my background. There it is.
No, it shows. Amazing.
So it was
what
right after
was still a thing.
Right. So he was like, "Oh, he just won a competition and took down a Fortune 500 company. Blah blah blah. He, if you let him run wild, he will steamroll you. Whatever." And I was like, "Man, I didn't live up to expectations. Man, this is pretty bad." So then I went about my business doing my other work. And then shortly thereafter, I checked in on the server the next day just to make sure. Well, my success rate had jumped up to like 43%. I was like,
what happened?
Exactly. So what had happened, I talked to my security point of contact. And I was like, what happened? He's like, someone reported you. I was like, okay, good. He's like, no, it's not good. I was like, how so?
Why not?
They reported me to the network administrators instead of the security team. The network administrator forwarded the email without cutting out my link or anything to the company and said, don't click this link.
And of course, logically, what happened? Everybody bloody clicked the link.
Or at least 43% of the people did. But it gets worse. So as soon as we said, okay, this is over, we're going to call it at 43%, I immediately shut down the server. Like, I didn't just kill Apache. I actually shut down the VPS instance completely so no one else could go to it. And then from there, I was instructed to wait until the last day of the month. So the day before I was going to get billed for another month, before I killed the VPS instance, before I killed the email address, the whole 9 yards. Yeah. So I log into the email account.
How many bounce back?
Oh, no, worse. It had been added to an internal distribution list with emails now.
Please have data for free.
Well, yeah. Well, the thing is, the emails were intended for the current CEO because the old CEO had retired at this point. So I had been added to all these internal sensitive mailing lists, and I got it, and I was like,
what should I do with this?
So it was one of those moments where I was like, security point of contact, we've got a problem. And he's like,
God, I love that.
And he's like, okay, download all of them and zip them up and send them to me. I was like, okay. So I do that. I'm on the phone with him when he opens it. I'm not going to repeat what he said, but from a rhyming perspective, if it walks like a duck and sounds like a duck, he probably didn't say duck. He's like,
how many times so in a row? How many times in a row?
It was one time, but it was kind of like Ralphie in A Christmas Story where it just goes.
The realization.
And he's like, okay, the point's proven. We need to buy training now. So that's probably like the pinnacle of my war stories. Another good one I have is last year during Hackfest in Quebec City, I competed in their social engineering capture the flag. But the caveat is it's all against French Canadian businesses.
So everything in French. I think I remember one of your pictures in there.
I don't speak French very well. I know enough French to get out of Charles de Gaulle Airport and to get around in Geneva. That's about it.
That's about it.
So I actually got second place in the competition despite not speaking French.
Oh, no. That's rubbing it in.
And, well, because the most important phrase I used was "Parlez-vous anglais?" And every time I got someone who could speak anglais, they were like, "We're in French Canada. Why don't you have a French-speaking person calling me?" Well, the lady who was going to call you had to go on emergency maternity leave, and we have a deadline, and I have to meet this. She went into labor a month and a half early. So I'm the only person available for this. I'm sorry. I don't speak very much French. Yeah. And they still just poof, gave me the data. So yeah.
You managed to win. You managed to win a CTF in French, but not speaking in French.
I didn't win. I got second place. The person who did win did speak French.
Yeah, come on, it's rubbing it in. It's like running with just one leg a marathon.
Hey, I mean,
amazing. It worked. So, I mean, you get your way around, and I think that's the beauty of OSINT. You just need to invent and need to. How actually did you start on that path?
How did I get into OSINT?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to share the embarrassing side of it.
We want to know the juicy part.
No. If you want to hear that, I do share that story.
Offline.
I share that story in my training these days. So if you want to hear it, you'll have to take the training.
I'll take the next training.
It's a little bit embarrassing. But to kind of be vague about it, really, before I was even in InfoSec, I was a king of using the phone book, like the actual paper phone book. For finding phone numbers and whatever. And then I did my time in the Navy. When I was in the Navy, I didn't deal anything with InfoSec or technology. I was an electronics technician that did navigation. So as I was getting out, that's when I got my certifications and started getting into industry. Well, then I watched the movie Catch Me If You Can, the story of Frank Abagnale, as depicted by Leonardo DiCaprio. And I was like, this is very interesting. Well, then I found out that he's a consultant and he wrote some books. So I bought some books, namely Stealing Your Life. And I started reading it. He didn't call it OSINT in the book as best as I can recall, but he explained how he could do several things and introduced me to some sites like Zaba Search and a few others. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And then I kind of stepped away and continued along the path of doing my normal InfoSec stuff. Fast forward to about 2015, 2016, maybe even 2017, when I'm running my podcast, I had been reading Black Hat Python written by Justin Seitz. I asked him to come on the podcast. He came onto the podcast. We talk a little bit about Python, but then he starts talking about automating OSINT.com, his website, or maybe .org. But either way, I'm going to verify that just because I want to cite it correctly.
Oh, we're gonna insert the link of all the reference.
I'm just a perfectionist with this, so I'm just making sure. It is automatingosint.com, so I was correct with that. So he comes on and he starts talking about some of the work he's done with Python, doing things with Imaga, and using trained images of AK-47s to identify terrorist accounts on social media, specifically Twitter. I was like, man, that's really cool. And then as he was explaining OSINT, I was like, man, I've been doing this for years. I just didn't know what it was called. I just thought it was being a creep. It's like, no, there's actually a profession behind it. So then
professional creep.
Exactly. So I get to researching it some more. I do a lot more investigating on it. I read up on it. I start reading the Gospels of St. Michael Basil. I start reading a lot of the work from Chris Hadnagy, some of the stuff from Kevin Mitnick, and then I start seeing the adjacent symbiotic relationship that OSINT has with social engineering. And I was like, I can naturally just talk my way out of pretty much anything. I mean, I could probably sell snowballs at the North Pole. Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. I could probably sell space heaters in Singapore, which is at 1 degree north.
that's actually an interesting thing, because is salespeople gonna be good at OSINT or social engineering?
Sales and marketing people do amazingly well at it. In fact, Chris Kirsch, one of the winners of the DEF CON SCCTF, he actually works in marketing. So salespeople,
psychology.
Right, exactly. And so for salespeople, they can benefit from OSINT by learning the OSINT techniques to identify better leads, better quality leads, and better companies to attempt to do business with. Whereas they can benefit from social engineering, from being able to build better rapport with potential customers and be able to basically not be a sleazebag. Because I've
be more careful.
Exactly. Because you need to be cognizant of, in social engineering, you need to be cognizant first of what you're going to say, and secondly, what you're going to say, how it's framed, and how it's going to make the other person feel. And based on how it makes them feel, that is going to direct your response. Right. So with salespeople, if they took the time to understand social engineering as opposed to just doing traditional sales tactics, they could be far more successful. Yeah. I'll put it this way. I have a lot of fun helping friends buy cars.
Online, used, or
in person,
just cutting the deal.
Pretty much whatever. I'll go around kicking the tires. I'll complain about the floor mats. I will like find out the salesperson's name and like be researching them on my phone while we're test driving and stuff like that. It's a little unfair sometimes. But
it's getting a good deal.
I mean, they do the same thing. You know, I was looking for a Volkswagen at a dealership once, and they tried to put me in a 2-seater BMW Z4 because I said that I liked BMWs. You know, they were asking questions, and, you know, I was kind of playing into it. Here's what they didn't realize. I told them explicitly from the get-go. I was like, I am not buying a convertible, and I'm not buying a car with a glass roof. And I told them on the phone. Well, I told them in like on the phone, I was like, I am currently under medical care right now, and you have exactly 1 hour from the time I step foot in the building until the time I walk out of the building. If you can't make the deal, then so be it. Bye. What I didn't tell them is a week prior, I had been in a car accident and flipped 4 times and walked away from it. But I was still under medical care. I was able to drive and go back to work and all of that. But, you know, my doctor was still supervising to make sure that nothing else happened, that, you know, I went through concussion testing. I had the x-rays, the MRIs, all that. I was perfectly fine, but my doctor was still evaluating just to make sure that there was nothing that was missed. So as a byproduct, that's why I did not want a convertible or a glass-topped car.
A suicide machine.
More or less. So I'm trying to look at a Volkswagen. I think it was a CC. I don't know. And they keep pushing me over towards this Z4 convertible. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a hard top. It was the soft top. And I let them go ahead and do it. I was like, here's enough rope. Let's see what you do with it. And they're like, you know, you seem like a kind of successful guy. I was like, yeah, I mean, I make a comfortable living. I have a good job. I enjoy my career. I have a master's degree, blah, blah. They're like, you know, successful men your age, they're all about driving the roadsters. I was like, really? Oh, yeah, we can cut you a good deal on this. That car is $15,000 more than what I'm looking to spend for one. But okay, keep talking. Let's see if your mouth's going to write some checks. Yeah, let's see what kind of checks your mouth's about to write. So they just keep going with it, and I'm like, by the way, you've just wasted 20 minutes trying to sell me on a car I told you I wasn't going to buy. I've got about 30 minutes before I walk out of here. So unless you want to get the deal made on this car, I'm walking. Mind you, this was not a Volkswagen dealership or a BMW dealership. It was a
generic one.
It was a Ford dealership.
A Ford? Okay.
So it was a used car. They both were used. So we go in, they write up the stuff, and they're like, "This is a legal binding document. If you sign this offer paper right here, you have to buy the car." I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm not a lawyer, but I know that's not the truth." So I look at it and I was like, all I see is a number on this. I want this itemized. They're like, "Well, we don't itemize things." And I told them, I was like, "Well, if you want to make this deal, you're going to itemize it." And they were like, "No." So basically, they ended up itemizing. I'm muting for a moment because Alexa's talking in the background.
So you effectively have a sniffing device, I hope.
I do. I use it for automating my lights and stuff because I've actually got my professional soft lights on right now as opposed to my overhead lights. And because I maintain my personal calendar, the Ascension calendar, and my day job calendar, basically everything on there I put on all three calendars. So all three calendars are synced. So they remind me when I get stuck in things. So yeah. But anyway, they finally come out and they show me this, and there's a warranty on it. I'm like, I didn't ask for a warranty. They're like, "Well, you have to have it." Why do I have to have a warranty? They're like, "This is a certified pre-owned warranty. And in the state of Georgia, you have to buy the certified pre-owned warranty." I was like, "Can you tell me which law states that I have to do this?" They're like, "It's not published." That's not how laws work. And I was like,
the
furthermore,
invisible law of Georgia says.
Right. I was like, if it's a legitimate law, because I never bought a car in Georgia before. I was like, if this is a legitimate law, sure. Okay. And the second they said it wasn't published, I was like, yeah, that's total crap. And they're like, "But this is certified pre-owned." I'm like, "You are a Ford dealership. You cannot certify a Volkswagen. So that's garbage." So I literally just got up and walked out right on the spot, saved myself about 10 minutes of my defined hour. So as a byproduct, that's probably like a social engineering fail.
For them, yeah, they try to sling you in a car that you didn't want, traditional dealership, but additional stuff that you didn't want.
Right, and trying to strong
more
arm
sneaky.
And if we look at this, right, from using Dr. Cialdini's 6 principles of persuasion, right, whenever they said that it's a law, basically what they were trying to say was they were trying to use the authority principle of persuasion. Whenever they were saying, "Hey, here's this car that successful men your age drive," that's social proof, also known as the consensus. I didn't give them time to attempt like commitment, consistency, or reciprocity. Urgency, scarcity is another one. I've had a dealership once tell me, there was a guy that was just in here looking at this car. He went down the street to the bank to get financing. If you can get financed before him, it's yours.
Yeah, the pressure of.
Well, here's the problem with that logic with that particular dealership. It was a Sunday, and banks are closed in the U.S. on Sundays.
Or it's a limited edition. There is only this. There is only this one.
Yeah, exactly. So, with salespeople, you get to see the good and the bad in social engineering. There are some that like legitimately take the time to listen and legitimately want to see your success. And then there are the others. I'm sure you've seen this as well. You're hanging out outside of a conference in the smoking area, and you see a few sales bros standing around talking about all the logos they got. And they're the ones that want to talk more than they listen. And for that logic, I'll actually cite Jim Nitterauer on that. And, he once told me you have twice as many ears as you do mouths. Use them proportionately. It's like,
yeah, just listen.
Yeah, I was like, man, that's profound. And honestly, as much as I've talked throughout this episode, actually, that's one of those things that I'm trying to work on more myself. I'm trying to work on saying more by saying less.
I love that quote because I talk a lot, so I tend to just inundate things. But during presentation, I think it was the first thing that I was a Cisco trainer at the very beginning of my career, and they put you through train the trainer, and they teach you exactly how many PowerPoint points you can use and how to vehicle it and how to synthesize it. And I think that's it. So, and I have a quote on my fridge saying, "Be a better listener." So listen more, talk less. And also that was the reason for starting the podcast, to actually speak less and let the other person have the stage.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, you've taken my training. I prompt for questions quite frequently just because I don't want to completely hijack every bit of the conversation with me just talking, because I've got time set up for people to ask questions. And then during that time, I don't want to be doing this number in front of everybody. So a lot of times when I say, "Hey, are there any questions?" I'll immediately mute my microphone and then do that. Because talking for 4 to 6 hours, or even 8, it can be a little stressful on your vocals. So yeah.
Have you done? See, man, I've done 3 recording and a couple of webinar and a couple of conferences today, so my chord are bad. Have you done also? I was talking to Chris and Ronald from the Hacker Valley Studio podcast, and they're actually doing training right now on the vocal cords, like singer, to actually not stress out your vocal cord. Because right now we're talking with a lot of vocal cord. You could talk a little bit more with diaphragm, stressing a little bit less out.
Yeah, I think and I got used, so when I'm in an office scenario, I tend to go with the vocal cords. But when I'm on stage, I tend to go from the diaphragm, just from that's something I picked up from my time in the Navy. Whenever we would be marching or whatever, you're not supposed to yell with your throat. You're supposed to use your diaphragm to be loud about things, and then doing it that way. So I do that a lot whenever I present, solely on the premise of, number one, when I present, I like to pace. And with that being said, I do typically have a microphone the whole time, but I also like to project my voice as well. Kind of like if you go to see Tony Bennett in concert, he typically gets out from behind the microphone and does Fly Me to the Moon without the microphone, just to show his vocal range and acoustic capabilities. So something very similar to that.
I actually need to be on one of your talk. We actually clashed on a couple of things at DEF CON. I didn't have the chance to listen to one. So please,
I've got a whole list of speaking engagements that I can share with you.
Okay.
I've got a dry erase board that about 20% of the dry erase board is nothing but lists of my upcoming speaking and training engagements.
Yes, please. So I can put everything in the comment of the podcast so that everybody knows where you're going to be and also where they're going to find.
Exactly. If the world is safe enough for travel, I'm going to be speaking at Sector in Toronto and doing a book signing in late October. But beyond that, Hacker Halted will be going on virtually at the same time. And I'll share with you a coupon code for people to get into that as well. So variety of stuff.
Hopefully, thank you. And hopefully October is going to go back to the norm. But I know Canada is being very, very conservative about COVID. So
yeah, so and where I live in the States, there are probably 4 states being more aggressive about opening than mine, and that's about it. So I've actually become more cautious and conservative as of late than I was before.
Yeah, no, I was actually stuck in the US for 2 months and I managed to travel back, and I saw actually the effect of traveling and that this whole thing is going to be changing the world forever for a little while at least. But it gives us also opportunity to open up the talk to as many people as possible and to learn this stuff. You started doing that before that, but yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. But we reach almost the hour, so it's been a pleasure to talk to you, Joe. I can't get never enough of you. But leave us with a positive message, since we talked down on COVID. Leave us with a positive message on OSINT or on cybersecurity in general.
General security, positive advice is stay away from gatekeeping and gatekeepers. There's a thread going on LinkedIn right now. Someone saying you cannot be successful in security if you don't know how to code, and security is not an entry-level job. I completely disagree with the success in security from the lack of coding. I will say that there are some jobs in security that are not entry-level, but there are some that are entry-level. And of course, any experience that you have with a variety of things such as hardware, networking, software, desktop, help desk, anything like that, any adjacent experience, or even soft skills that you have within industry can be applicable. Positive advice for OSINT. One of my coworkers in a call today said, you never run out of searches and you never run out of targets. The only thing you do run out of is time. So honestly, the biggest thing I can tell anyone, regardless of what part of security you're trying to get into, is be passionate, work hard, be driven, because those are the things that, regardless of where you go to get training, you're not going to, like, I can't train you to be passionate. I can't train you to have a solid work ethic. I can train you on how to do OSINT all day, every day. But if you lack the passion and the drive, you're going to be marginal.
So search your why, not the how. You can learn the how, but you can't learn the why.
Exactly. So, just be passionate about it, put your heart into it. And this industry, you will get out of it exactly what you put into it. I put a lot more into it than I should at times, but after 10 years in the industry, community. Exactly. And, I had people when I first started out in industry that took a vested interest in making sure that I was successful and on the right path. I try to pay that forward because, at the end of the day, I put a little bit too much in sometimes, but at the same time, this industry has been very good to me. Even after 10 years.
And karma is a thing.
There's that too.
Yeah. So what you give back, you're going to receive back from the universe. Or at least that's what I think. So that's why I do a lot of community-driven things. And that's what we do the podcast. And again, thank you so much for everything that you do, and the story that you share has been amazing. And I can't get enough of it. So probably I'm going to ask you at some stage to come back. And hopefully I'm going to see you in London at some stage, or in the UK when all these things goes away.
Absolutely. I'm so bummed by this. I was supposed to do 3 speaking engagements in Europe in May, and I had to cancel my travel to Prague, Kiev, and Gdynia. So I'm totally bummed about that.
Yeah, but hey, better safe. Get over it.
Yeah, better safe than sorry.
Yeah, and also it's going to help you focus. So I'll take that as an opportunity.
My lack of travel has seen me become very, very, very productive.
Amazing. So there is a positive side in anything. So thank you very much, Joe, and thank everybody for tuning in. Sorry we gone a little bit over time, but this conversation was too amazing to stop at any stage. My bad, but hey. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks for having me.
Have a great one and stay safe, and see you online soon, hopefully. See ya.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, consider leaving us a review or sponsoring us on Patreon. It helps us bring on amazing guests and keep the podcast alive and free. Consider supporting us at www.patreon.com/CSCP and watch other episodes at www.cybercloudpodcast.com.